Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the September 27th, 2021 meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee to order, and I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 20, and the legislature's extension of that order, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream at youtube.com/DHSTV Media. In addition, the event will be rebroadcast on DCTV channels 9 and 18 on the following days: Wednesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., Friday at 6 a.m., Saturday at 8 a.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. The school committee reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as soon as possible. We have a roll call, please, Ms. Genther.
Shannon Jenkins.
Here.
Mary Waite.
Here.
Kathleen Amaral.
Here.
John Nunes.
Yep.
Chris Oliver.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. The first item on our agenda is public comment. I know Ms. Genther has received several emails that people submitted this afternoon for public comment. Those have all been forwarded to the school committee for us to read. Ms. Genther, have you received any other emails?
I have not.
All right. So if anyone would like to make a comment regarding any of the items that are on our agenda for the evening, they can send an email to Kathleen Genthner at dartmouthschools.org. Those emails will be forwarded to us, and I will just check in with you at the end of the meeting again tonight, Ms. Genther. The next item on our agenda is approval of the regular session minutes from September 13th, 2021. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Oliver, a second by Mr. Nunes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so that motion carries unanimously. Next on our agenda, we're going to welcome back our student representative, Josh Moniz. Thank you for coming back, Josh. I'm glad we didn't scare you away. And I will invite you to give your student representative report for us.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Good evening, everyone. I am Joshua Moniz, and I'm a senior at Dartmouth High School. I would like to give you an update on what is going on at Dartmouth High. This past Wednesday, September 22nd, DHS students met with their advisories during PACE, where students scheduled themselves for PACE through October 12th. The advisory session focused on making SMART goals, which students and their advisor will conference on and update progress throughout the school year. SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. I found this time set aside for meaningful goal setting to be helpful, as it allowed me to organize my plans for the school year. The marching band and color guard got off to a great start with their win in their first competition this weekend in Bellingham, Massachusetts. They are hosting their first home show of the season this Saturday, October 2nd at Dartmouth Memorial Stadium. Several of our athletic teams are off to exceptional starts this fall season, including our football team, which remains undefeated this season. Our football team plays Apponequet at Dartmouth Memorial Stadium this Friday, October 1st. This past Thursday, September 23rd, the school counseling department met with all members of the senior class to talk about post-secondary plans during the PACE period. Each Friday is a Future Focus Friday during PACE, where seniors can sign up with their school counselors to receive assistance on some aspect of post-secondary planning. Topics are advertised during morning announcements and include topics such as the Common Application and resume building. On October 5th, there will be a college fair during PACE at DHS for all members of the senior class to explore colleges and speak with representatives. On October 7th, there will be a club and activity expo during all lunches for students to find a club that they're interested in joining this school year. The Key Club is planning for a fun sock drive during the month of October called Socktober. Fridays will be Crazy Sock Days, where DHS students, faculty, and staff are encouraged to wear their craziest socks in the spirit of Socktober. New socks will be collected in a donation bin in the main lobby. All socks will be donated to a local shelter. That concludes my update on Dartmouth High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Does anybody have any questions for Josh or comments? Ms. Waite?
Yes. Could you just remind us, I just wasn't able to hear clearly, the dates for the club fair and for the college fair, just for parents are listening.
Of course. The college fair is on October 5th,
Okay.
and October 7th will be the club fair.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. And the college fair will take place during PACE, and the
Okay.
club and expo fair will be during all lunches.
Excellent.
Thank you, Josh. Other questions or comments? Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Josh, for your update. I'd just like to ask you, you've had several weeks to settle in now into the high school and to get into a routine. How are things going? How do you find, from your perspective, how do you find, the environment? Are people, everyone happy to be there? Just compared to last year.
Yeah, I think things are going great. I think the summer was a great reset and recharge, and I think that it's just nice to be in the back, like full swing, like full in person, with seeing all my teachers every day, full fall sports, all in swing. So I think it's really nice to kind of have that sense of normalcy
Yep.
that we missed last year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
no problem. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Kind of what we've been saying. They needed to be.
Thank you so much, Josh. As always, you're welcome to stay, but you're also free to go because we know how busy you are. So we appreciate your report. Thank you.
very much.
Next, I'd like to take just one item out of order tonight. I'd like to move the consent agenda up so that Mr. Flint doesn't have to be here all night listening to the presentations, although I'm sure they're going to be enthralling material. So the consent agenda is the DSMA permission to participate in a national championship. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Nunes, a second by Mr. Oliver. Let's open it up for discussion. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
Should have worn my 4 for 4. We'll need one that hopefully says 5 for 5.
What was that? I can't hear you.
I should have worn my T-shirt that says 4 for 4. I didn't think of that.
I'll just say, I think, we're super excited. We're that this is going on again, hopefully, all conditions, willing, and we all wish you, I think, the best of luck. If there's no other questions or comments, we can vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much for
you.
coming,
Best of luck.
Mr. Flint, and good luck. All right, so next on our agenda, we have our school improvement plan presentations. I will hand it over to Dr. Gifford. I think she might have a little introduction here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So as you can see, we have our high school up first. As I've sent the committee on a previous email, we have decided this year to focus on using the acceleration roadmap that DESE had put out. We're not using all parts of it. It is quite comprehensive. But we decided to get a kickstart after overcoming a year of all kinds of things happening, obviously a variety of instructional strategies, et cetera, that we would embrace the philosophy of moving forward rather than catching up, if you will, that all students, given the right supports, monitoring with feedback, et cetera, that we will take students from where they are, but teach grade level standards with, as I said, scaffolding and the right supports in place. So we asked each of the schools to focus on the priority areas of the, that DESE has put out in the roadmap so that we could have a sense of community, and we're all focused on the same priority areas and how we're going to move our schools forward. So with that said, Mr. Tebow also would kind of touch on some of those and then what the high school has proposed to engage in those priority areas.
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. So as Dr. Gifford alluded to, this year's school improvement work has been really framed around the Department of Education's acceleration roadmap, and key or core to that roadmap is embracing that philosophy of acceleration versus remediation. And I think it's important that people understand, you think of acceleration, you think of fast, and that's not what's implied in the roadmap work. It's not implied that you rush through curriculum or that you speed through, instruction. That's really not what's meant at all. What is really meant is that you start students on grade appropriate and, grade level work, and that rather than take months of remediation, you provide just-in-time supports and intervention for them. For students as needed. And so again, that's as Dr. Gifford said, that's kind of how all of the schools have been asked to frame the school improvement work this year. And again, it's wrapped around, in the Department of Ed's acceleration roadmap, there are 3 priorities that are outlined in the roadmap, and they are fostering a sense of belonging and partnership so that families and students feel engaged as partners in support of their children's learning. There's also the idea of continuously monitoring student understanding and student learning so that we can be sure students are getting what it is we intend for them to get out of the instruction they're receiving. And when they aren't, providing those just-in-time scaffolds or supports so that they can meet that grade appropriate and grade level instruction. So at the high school, what this looks like is the following. In terms of sense of belonging and partnership, Dartmouth High School, we kicked off the year with 2 professional development days, and we really focused on providing workshops for our teachers to think about acceleration versus remediation, think about what the implications are for our practice. We also took, the Department of Ed includes in that roadmap suggested practices and activities that teachers would engage in. And so opening common planning time of the year, we asked teachers to kind of complete a self-assessment checklist, but also in common planning times to brainstorm and discuss how would we use the opening weeks of school to really start to foster a sense of belonging and partnership with our students and families. And so, and each department kind of completed their own individual, detailed, very specific in terms of what steps they'd take in their classrooms at the classroom level to create this sense of belonging and partnership. In addition to that, we met with our school counseling department back on August 23rd and discussed how we might focus and prioritize. We ended last school year with about 160 students still in the virtual learning academy. So that's, some of those students were seniors, but around 100, 120 students had not, had finished the year not in-person learning for us. So we felt very strongly that we need to reach out to those students to kind of welcome them back, transition them back, because we know it had been, we were aware it had been about 18 months since they had stepped foot, some of those students in Dartmouth High School. So we asked our school counselors and our school social workers to take the lead on that and reaching out to families in that way. We also have taken a look, our assistant principals, our student support teams have taken a look at attendance data and looking really for trends from last school year, and again, trying to communicate to students and families the importance of attendance. Again, it's always kind of a, with the caveat being that we are still in a pandemic, so we don't want students coming in if they're feeling sick, but if they're not feeling sick, we don't want them taking any days off, right? If they're feeling well, we need them here each and every day. In addition to that, we use other tools at the high school. The weekly community update that we put out every Friday afternoon includes a great deal of information aimed at creating a partnership, communicating with parents and families what's going on here at the high school, what information they need to support their students' well-being and success here at the high school. We work really hard at that. And also this year, as part of this work, we're going to be leading a community effort to develop the vision of a graduate. Again, that's work that we had started pre-pandemic, COVID hit, and we've been focused on survival since then, but it's time to get back to the strategic work and moving the high school and Dartmouth Public Schools forward. And so we're excited to be able to create that, and that's going to require a strong partnership, not just with parents, students, educators, but also we'll be reaching out to UMass Dartmouth and to Bristol Community College as well to hopefully bring them to the table for some of that work. And so that's the first priority around sense of belonging, partnership. And of course, at the classroom level, it also looked a lot of relationship building activities in the first week and a half of class as well, really getting teachers to know their students, students to know their teachers, and students to know one another. Because again, that's another piece. We have some students who had never been here, so maybe they didn't know all of their classmates. So having opportunities to do that was important as well. The second priority is around monitoring understanding. So we have talked in those opening workshops of the school year with our teachers, and we continue to talk with them as the year goes on in common planning time and through the through a faculty newsletter that gets put out, really focusing on daily formative low stakes assessments like a do now, an exit ticket, so that teachers can get an understanding of how their students are doing on a daily basis, and then use that information to inform and adjust practice as you go, and to provide those just-in-time scaffolds and supports that the Department of Ed roadmap calls for, and that we know are critical to understanding. One of the things that we highlighted when we talked with our teachers was that one of the nice things about the Department of Ed's roadmap is that it's just good teaching practices, a lot of it, and a lot of it are practices, a lot of them are practices that our teachers have already been doing, which I think is helpful, because as educators, I think there's sometimes the rush to think, oh, this is one more new thing, I gotta stop doing everything I've ever done because this is a new and that's not what this is. It's really about committing to concrete practices that are effective teaching strategies. And again, like I said, a lot of them our teachers were already engaged in, so that's a good thing. Using common planning time to discuss, develop, and adjust our common benchmark assessments. Again, the last 18 months have been very choppy with, 6 different iterations of a schedule last year. So the benchmarks weren't really something that we focused on as we would have in a normal year. But so getting back to those benchmark assessments, making adjustments as necessary, and really using the student results from those assessments to drive instruction forward, and making adjustments as needed is critical to this idea of acceleration. And so that will be ongoing throughout the year. And again, our teachers will be doing that work in common planning time, working with their colleagues. One of the other pieces that's critical to the monitoring, understanding, and providing those just-in-time supports is our PACE period, which, again, we've had for a couple of years now, and it's nice to be able to have a schedule with structures built into it that allow us to do that work. That's not common at the high school level. A lot of times high schools don't have time for intervention blocks or anything of that, anything like that. So having the PACE period and being able to use it purposefully to provide just-in-time supports will be critical to our work this school year. Finally, the third priority is around grade-appropriate instruction, and again, highlighting that a lot of this work goes on during common planning time, which our teachers have, 3 times out of every 7 days, out of every 7 school days. So it's almost every other day that they have it. But again, it provides them time to work collegially with their colleagues from their department, really to examine and review the curriculum documents that are in existence, the pacing guides, maps, and to make any adjustments that they feel are necessary to provide some additional time to provide those just-in-time supports that are called for. Finally, the last piece here I just want to emphasize is that, again, before the pandemic, we had some good work going with our blended, personalized, and project-based learning. And I think that, we had 2 cohorts of teachers who worked with the Highlander Institute in building administration for 2 years. And then the pandemic happened, and again, we shifted our mindset, just get through this day, one day at a time. And so refocusing and reconnecting with that blended, personalized, and project-based learning is definitely a priority that we'll be emphasizing throughout the school year as well. And with that, I would say I'm happy to answer questions, but Mr. Flint didn't have any, so I don't think I should have to answer any either. But no, all joking aside.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. Questions from the committee? Mr. Nudes?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Tebow and Ms. Xavier. Couple of things. I was making notes as you were explaining. You talk, and again, I realize it's September 27th, and the students have been in for a month, only, just about a month. But with regards to the chronic absenteeism, save for those who are unfortunately, with the COVID issue. And have you had any issues that you're already, a month into school having to try and deal with already, that you're aware of?
Yes, a lot. I will say this, that some of the issues are not directly related to COVID per se, in that they're not sick themselves.
Yeah.
But we're definitely dealing with, concern that, oh, there are COVID cases in the schools, is it safe? That kind of lingering question is certainly something that we deal with. In fact, got an email today from a parent very concerned, which, again, it's understandable when you have, everyone has a unique set of circumstances. So there's some of that we've dealt with for sure. And our social workers have been great at getting some of our students, as I mentioned, who haven't been in the past 18 months. They have had some challenges, but they've been here in the building, so that's good, so that the social workers can support them. We did ask that the social workers kind of track that data for us so we can see how, big of a problem it actually is,
Yeah, thank you. You're talking about changes in assessments and student results and such, and I had, I was thinking like the New England weather, wait 5 minutes, it changes, just the way things go. With regards to the PACE period type of deal, do you have a lot of students that really take advantage of that with, hunting down a teacher or a social worker, or vice versa?
Yeah,
Type of deal.
So the
And-
PACE period is really a dynamic period. It's used for a variety of purposes. We have we have a population of students who need to get energy out. They don't have a wellness class or a physical education class in their schedule. So some days they sign up to use the gym or the fitness center, right? So that provides them an opportunity to get the energy out that they need so they can focus when they're in class for the rest of the day. We have another group of students who absolutely are diligent in using it, primarily for academic support pieces, and they meet regularly with students, with teachers rather, to get that support. We have other groups of students who see clubs and activities advisors when DECA really gets into gear. I know that Mrs. Kane always has students from DECA who go down and get feedback on their presentations and in that way. In our band, we often have students who are practicing during the PACE period in the auditorium, with Mr. Flint from time to time. So yeah, the period is well used, and it's used for a variety of purposes, really.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I was, curious how it worked and that type of deal. Thank you very much. I'm good, Madam Chair.
Other questions? Ms. Amaral?
Thank you for this. Thank you for all that you do, in the school. I don't have anyone with you this year, but a few more years, I will. I can appreciate what Desi put out and and what you're doing in terms of like that acceleration, kind of let's move forward. Personally, kind of hold that philosophy for my children, no matter the level of need. 2 steps forward, 3 steps ahead, back, whatever. It all works out, and we're going to get there. We've been getting some emails from family members who are just really concerned about, learning loss. And I guess my only question to you, because I know what you're doing, but if you could spell out to, say, a family who is concerned about their student, and although, you've got these monitoring and all these, safeguards in place, if they feel that things aren't being addressed or their student has some significant social, emotional, mental health issues that are getting in the way of their learning, coupled with the impact of COVID, what would be your suggestion as it could be best practice that you've already been doing, which I think it might be, but if you could spell out sort of step 1, step 2 for a family or a student who is feeling this way, most likely a parent, because I think the student is the one that's going to be more reticent to kind of reach out in that way.
Sure. So if it's a social, emotional, mental health challenge that a student's facing, we have 4 school social workers, a school psychologist as well, and 4 school counselors. All of them are ready and willing to help the student. So reach out to one of them. That would be my first recommendation to, to address that need, right? Mental health needs are very challenging. And I think as a society, we struggle with that because it's not something you can see. The comparison I always draw is, when you have strep throat, you take antibiotics, it goes away. Mental health that's not how it works, right? That's oftentimes we see that people struggle with mental health their entire lives, and it's more of a chronic illness, right? But it's one of those ones that you can't see. And so if there's not that communication, if our counselors aren't engaged, it's hard to support. It's hard to support because we just might not know. So please, communication would definitely be step one. If there's concern about learning loss in terms of curriculum or instructional questions, the teacher is always the best person to start with. We often get calls or emails, and more often than not, the teacher hasn't been engaged first. The teacher's the person who's in the classroom with our children, right? So I'm happy to talk, but if I'm the first person you're talking to, then I need to go back to the teacher. It's not as productive as if we just reach out to the teacher first. If we reach out to a teacher and we're not feeling like the issue's resolved, then the assistant principal for the student would be the next person, and then the associate principal or the principal after that. And again, we should all and are all willing to help. It's just a matter of going to the right person at the right moment to get the help that you need.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Waite?
Yeah, so I do have two children in your school, and I have to thank you. It's, been a great back to school for them. And I think, if I look at the year and, tying back into the PACE period, I have to say, I think that is a tremendous resource for you to have. And I see my own children using that, certainly for test retakes. My daughter's running a club during that time. So I think it's just, and again, I get the sense from the students who are coming home that they feel a lot of empowerment in the school as well, which I have to say is a testament to your staff. And, even reading through this more newsletter, which is so great, I'm impressed by saying like, hey, if there isn't a club that you would like to see, at that, you can form your own club. So I think that's really energizing. There's a lot of opportunities for the kids, and that, they can get involved in band, or they can, just a myriad of different things that appeals to all sorts of different students. So I think that's really exciting. One of the questions I did have is, when we go back to last year and we think about those students, and I know we're engaging the students back who are on TECA or Ingenuity, TECA, from the middle school. Has your staff noticed, not just, the social emotional loss of not being in this classroom for a year and a half, but have they noticed any learning disparities with those students, or have they kind of flowed fairly seamlessly into the school in terms of their skill set?
So no one has brought to my attention any concerns about our students who were in VLA last year. That's not to say that they're on or couldn't be. One of the things that we're doing, we're looking at our MCAS data from last year, and obviously that's only 10th grade, but that's one of the pieces that we'll be looking at, is to see how did our VLA 10th graders do? Was there a difference in their performance? So we are taking a look at that. I think it goes without question that when you have a live professional teacher in front of you, that experience is obviously going to be superior to a computer screen. Just is. So I think we've learned that from the pandemic, if nothing else. So.
And then just one other follow-up, because I think the newsletters that you send out are just, great and really informative. Do they allow you, can you from this more, I'm not that familiar with that platform, do you get data back from that to say
Yes.
how many parents engaged, what did they open? And because again, I think it's such a great resource as I skim down and see SAT, prep and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, so we do have analytics that come with SMORE. They are tricky. I mean, with people using, I assume it's because they're using VPNs, because you can see where they've read it from in terms of the time. Every once in a while, even though I only sent it out to parents or our faculty newsletter to the faculty members, every once in a while I'll get Fort Lauderdale or California, and I just assume it's because the IP address is getting kicked out to somewhere else, and that's where it's not. I'm not a tech person, but I think that's what's happening. But yes, to your point, also, we can see how much time they've spent reading the entire newsletter, can see what links they've used or not used, not on an individual basis, but how many, yes. Yep.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Oliver?
Yeah, I'll just echo some of my colleagues' sentiments. Thank you for the presentation. I think at the end of the day, going into this year, we knew it was going to be a monumental task, getting all our students back in front of the teachers, which we certainly did. I know that my 10th grader comes home. She's definitely learning. She's happy. She's happy to be in school. I think there's some comments that have been made, whether it's on social media or in the media in general. And I think at the end of the day, really, what parents need to do is just simply, before sharing or expressing your displeasure, just reach out to the school, reach out to the guidance staff, reach out to the social workers, reach out to the administration. Let's start there. Let's open up the conversations there. And then certainly if they're not getting the answers, the parents aren't getting the answers that they're looking for, because from what I can tell is that I think overall the high school is doing a tremendous job trying to, make up for learning loss and address social emotional issues. But there's a chain of command, and that starts with reaching out to the high school. And then if they're not happy with what you have to say, or anyone else, please feel free to email any of us on the school board. But instead of taking to social media and other avenues, so let's just all work together for the greater benefit of our children in Dartmouth. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Oliver. And I want to follow up on that too. A lot of us work in schools here on the school committee are related to that. And, the start of the school year has been pretty overwhelming. It's been a lot. And so I would also ask the people to have patience. It may take a while for you to get to a response, particularly if you ask like 50 questions in your email. It may require some research, some going out, and it may just be, quite frankly, that there's just not time right now. And so I know people tend to expect a response right away, and I know these are important issues, but to your point of all just sort of, cutting each other some slack, I hope people can be patient, because I know how hard everyone is working to get this school year underway, and I think that can go a really long way to helping things out. I'll also say my son was, in the VLA, and he was not really all that thrilled to be going back this year, to not have a quite normal year. But it has been a really good transition, and he's really quite happy. So I think you guys that's a testament to the great job you're doing. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Can I just comment too on the email piece? If someone emails and does not get a response, please pick up the phone and call, because that's the other thing to keep in mind. I've had folks who have misspelled my name, and so I don't get the email. I've also had email go to the spam filter. And so by all means, if you email and don't get a response, please pick up the phone and call us. We're a phone call away. Oftentimes phone conversations are much more efficient than email as well.
Yes.
But either way, reach out. We're happy to help.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We appreciate you coming to present to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion?
Oh,
to
yeah, we do. We need a motion, I think, to accept the school improvement plan. Thank you,
Make that
Mr.
motion.
Nunes.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Ms. Amaral. Is there any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously. All right, next we have our middle school improvement plan. Do they
Mr.
need it?
Hay, no, I think they're the same priorities, of course, as I said. We're focusing on the same areas, so we have Mr. Doan, Mr. Hayes, and Ms. Deacus to present tonight.
Thank
for
you.
having us. Mr. Rossi was unable to attend. He's not feeling well, so he sends his regards. Thank you. So thank you for having us this evening. As Mr. Tebow had said, we're targeting a lot of the same areas when it pertains to acceleration, recovery, but also that social emotional piece as well is something we're focusing on. Some of our action steps, the steps that we had taken last year, and we'll continue with them, and we're kind of taking a look at them and tweaking, revising, and adjusting as needed. And we've also implemented some additional action steps, which we'll share with you this evening, again, to support the needs of students. I'll be sharing with you slide 1, and Mr. Hayes and Mr. Stikas will follow up. We talk about the Online Learning Center. As you well know, that's something we instituted last year, and we thought it was important to continue that this year. So, beginning of October, parents will be given the access code with their children, and we'll be offering that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 2:30 to 4. That's approximately 4.5 hours of support during the course of the week. And our teachers in 6th, 7th, and 8th, that the online center will be supported by staff. So if a student, for example, in 6th grade has particular math questions and needs some further support, we'll have a 6th grade math teacher online to support them. And so we feel it worked really well last year. And again, we encourage parents as well as our students to take advantage of this, because I think, especially for students, you know, we talk about in COVID, if students are going to be quarantined and unable to come to school, but there are also times that we do have students that are out due to other illnesses and areas as well. So we can utilize, they can access and utilize that time to really kind of stay in touch with their academic piece. So we're excited about that, and again, we're going to continue to move forward with that. We took a little bit of a step backwards when we talk about our RARE, respect, accountability, responsibility, and esteem. That's something as a middle school that we've always been proud of and tried to instill in our students. But this year, again, we're going to have our monthly celebrations. And our theme this year is really talking about success, achievement, students identifying areas that they want to improve upon, and we'll put multiple bulletin boards within the school, which we title achievement boards, where students will have an opportunity just to kind of reflect on, you know, the goals that they had established, and not long-term goals, but kind of those short goals, you know, what they may be, whether it's social or academic. And then we'll have our achievement board where they can kind of post up, because, you know, we all want to promote that success. Also, the theme for this year is to be a difference maker. That's the theme for our staff and as well as students. So a lot of that emphasis will be on a lot of those celebrations and just encouraging students as well as staff. And just to let them know that, you know, I think we found that the celebration piece is important. We want to, you know, we just don't want to talk the talk, but we want to walk it and let students know that these are important, and we want to be able to hear their voices, etc. In providing support to all students, I mean, we've benefited from the ESSER funding via the federal and state government. So when we talk about positions, additional positions, we have what we call our Acceleration Recovery Educator, teacher. That's in the past, it's been we call it our Student Success Center room. We had a TA who kind of monitored that on a part-time basis, but we have a full staff member now. And that position will work closely with the additional position we have this year. We call our at-risk guidance counselors. So those students who maybe are not having success academically, this is really the focus. And so we'll be identifying those students through our data team and RTI meetings, and really identifying students who maybe are just having some difficulty, some challenges. It could be just study skills, organization, just things of that nature. So they will have not only that individual teacher connecting with them, but also the guidance counselor will be more of an outreach, checking in with those students, taking a look at their plans, their success plans, reaching out to home, parents, letting them know, encourage them of some of the resources that we have within. And so, but we're being very strategic and purposeful with this. We're really taking our time and looking at students, meeting with our teachers on a weekly basis, identifying those students who maybe are having some challenges, some difficulty, and just providing them an opportunity to have success and help support them and move them in the right direction. We have done that in the past, but this year with these additional positions, it enables us to kind of take it to another level. And it's specifically with students who are out for long-term absences. We are already right now, our student success person, Acceleration Recovery, is Google meeting with those students that are home virtually, checking in with them, monitoring Google Classroom, and just providing that additional support. So again, it's an action step that we feel is extremely important. if I may, I mean, we talk about communication with parents. I like to just go on record that from middle school perspective, I just can't thank our parents enough. The adjustments we've made, not only in pickup and drop off, but also with our schedules, just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They've been very, very supportive and flexible. And again, via Google Classroom, Remind apps, our Aspen grading portal, will be up to date on a bi-weekly basis. Meeting with our teachers on a weekly basis, reaching out with parents, just trying to maintain that two-way communication and just providing an environment where we're encouraging parents to just please reach out with any questions or concerns that they may have, so that we can be proactive and, you know, develop plans in which we could better support their children and our students. So that's always been an emphasis for us in the past. But again, we're working hard to just kind of further develop those communicative mechanisms in which we can support that. In addition, we do have a social worker. We haven't had one for quite some time. And I have to say, we meet with our guidance student support team on a weekly basis. Sometimes we have to activate it more so than we want, depending on the situation. But on that weekly basis, we've been able to really streamline that social emotional piece, those services, far more than we have in the past. We've, as you know, traditionally we had 3 guidance counselors. They're outstanding. But to have a social worker and also to have our at-risk guidance counselor really talk about the needs of students and how best to support them, you know, developing, you know, our social groups and just meeting those needs as a whole and focusing not only on the social emotional but also the academic component as well. And the students now are feeling comfortable. I know it's we're still in September, but parents also are well aware that we have our social worker. And I have to be honest with you, a lot of our 6th grade students, they, you know, it's been an adjustment for them when they were in 5th grade with a lot of the transitional piece. So just to have that additional support for them this year. Some of them have experienced some anxiety just coming back to school, stepping into the physical plant, and that adjustment piece. So just having those additional resources have been extremely important. The community partnerships, again, with our youth advocates, social services agencies, you know, we continue to maintain those relationships because a lot of times parents and families need additional support outside the school. So we, again, maintain those relationships so we can provide those services. From an academic perspective this year, UMass Dartmouth has been working on some grants related to STEM, so they've reached out to us. So we've been working them to assist them with that, and that's PD, that's with our 7th grade science teachers as well as our computer teachers. So again, to maintain that partnership has been important for us in the past, and you know, continue to do so. Also, the focus this year from a PD perspective for us, we have PD for the LGBTQ PD, which are represented from the Department of Education, is going to come down. We did that about 3 or 4 years ago. But I think it's very important that we revisit that, and so that we can make sure that we have supports in place to support that population. Also, in addition, we are working on having someone come to speak to our staff in regards to trauma. And so how to teach our staff as to how better support those students who are struggling. Because we do know that they are. Sometimes maybe quietly, internally, but it's there. So just to provide our staff with just information as to how to identify some of those behaviors, some of those triggers, and how we can kind of best support them. So from a sense of belonging and partnership, you know, that really is been our focus in the areas that I've shared with you. And again, some of these action steps, the steps that we're just building upon, revising, tweaking, that we've been using over the past year and a half, right, through some of those additions. But again, the additional positions we've had also has enabled us to take it to another level. So I do have no doubt that when it's all said and done, that these action steps and the additional support staff that we have, we're in a better position to support our students, both from an academic and social and emotional piece. So thank you, and we're on to the next slide. Mr. Hayes.
So a lot of what we'll hear here is things that Mr. Tebow spoke about working at the high school in terms of us monitoring, understanding, and also a lot of it are practices that we already had in place at the middle school, things that we were already doing, monitoring student understanding, and we're really just, you know, highlighting on those things right now. To include an increased frequency of assessments, so we've taken some some of our benchmark assessments, which have typically been reserved for the end of units, and scaffolding those so that it allows us to check for understanding more frequently, and allows us to also provide just-in-time interventions for students. We're also able to use the data that's collected from those assessments and from student work samples to target those students. So you heard Mr. Doan spoke about our RTI team and data teams meeting in order to use our student support center and the full-time educator that we were able to place in that student support center. Well, when we're able to collect the data from our frequent assessments, we can really target those students, whether it be students who are falling behind slightly or because of academic challenges, or students who have excess absences, which creates an issue for them. We're able to target them quickly and to get them the supports that they need. It also helps us to revise our scope and sequences, which is, again, a practice that we've been involved in the middle school. Our teachers meet as a team every 6 days, once per cycle. It's something that they've been doing forever, but now with more data collection, we're able to do that again more frequently. Along with that, our STAR test, again, something that we've been using for a number of years to collect data on students. The reports now allow us to identify specific weaknesses, to run reports that identify specific weaknesses for individual students as well as for groups of students, right? Which again ties right back into our RTI process, which we can then take those groups of students, target those weaknesses, use our student support center to support them, and then track that with our guidance counselor, with our extra guidance counselor who's now in charge of, helping out to run that situation. So I think, with these supports and with things that we've been doing at the middle school, I think we're making strides to really support those students who could be struggling for any number of reasons in order to create a situation where they can be successful, and then where we can focus on those successes that we're having.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
So in order to ensure that we have the grade appropriate instruction, our curriculum planning time that we've been using for several years is really essential to review and revise our scope and sequences. Our standards, our I can statements are embedded right within those documents, in addition to the tiered assessments, resources, parts of the units are all right within that, thank you, are all right within that document itself. So it's a live document that we are using all of the time. As he had said, we've increased the frequency of some of our assessments throughout the year. We're not waiting to the end of the benchmark so that we can really monitor that information. Additionally, we have added the pace, and meaning the number of days we think a unit is going to take us right within the scope and sequence. And then we're developing a long-term assessment calendar for each content area so that we make sure we're hitting all of the standards and units that we need to throughout the year. One of the new things that we added this year, originally it was out of necessity, but we've come to realize over the summer that it was something that we were actually really looking forward to, was every day for approximately 30 minutes we have something called academic enrichment. We've created a number of resources for the kids, choice boards, hyperdocs, that the kids can access to get grade level practice in every area. There's vocab, there's there's math through BuzzMath or SumDog, there's vocab testing, there's Newsella, you name it. One example is the 100-word scary story contest that the kids do every year. They work on it that time. This year the theme is unsolved mysteries. So they're working on that at that time. The choice board that we created will switch up probably once a term, if not sooner. For example, the 100-word story contest is over the end of October, so we'll add something different at that point. In addition, some of the teachers, the 8th grade science, for example, they're creating choice boards for the end of each unit. So astronomy or chemistry, they have a choice board that the kids can access throughout the year at any time during that enrichment time. So when it comes to MCAS, they have been practicing all year long standards that they may have learned now, and they'll be able to review it again in April. The CPT time, again, has been essential for us to share those resources and strategies. We really use the pre-assessment data, the STAR reports that Mr. Hayes just referred to. They've even added it now, so if, for example, we can say, identify kids based on a standard that they're having difficulty in. So let's say that we have 20 kids in the 6th grade that just didn't get theme. They're having a really hard time with that. We can identify it through the data now and redo that and add the scaffolding in for that identified group. So we have a lot more data than we used to, which is great. And that really helps us identify where those lessons need to be scaffolded. We also use it, though, to calibrate work and look at what maybe we need to revisit or reteach if we miss the mark on something. So we can go back with that, all the while trying to maintain the grade level curriculum and staying on pace. One conversation that actually started last spring was with the special ed teachers. And we had many conversations trying to be creative on how we could make this work, and that's that they really need to be a part of the content area curriculum meetings. So we were able to adjust their schedules so that they are now much more involved with those meetings on a regular basis, and it's worked out really well. They're a vital part of that interdisciplinary planning. They are the experts when it comes to tiered instruction and scaffolding. So now they're working collaboratively every single week with the content area teachers. And the resources that they come up with, the tiered assessments they may come up with, the modifications, all immediately get put right in that scope and sequence. So it's used right away. It's not, okay, we'll go see them and then in a couple of days we'll have it. There's no more wait time, and it's been a really positive experience to keep that grade level content going with the scaffolds that we need. The last point that we've been working hard with is that it's important for us to educate not only families, students, but ourselves, our staff, and remind ourselves that just because there might be a gap or somebody maybe hasn't hit their target yet, doesn't necessarily mean that there's a learning disability going on. Some people need, kids need more practice or more teaching to get to reach that standard. That's okay. We've all been through a lot over the last year and a half, and it's okay to have that conversation and say, it's okay that maybe we're not quite there yet. We're going to get there together. There's nothing wrong. We need to move forward, and we're going to do this. That's not to say if there's a learning disability, we're not going to address that, of course, in a different way, probably a different presentation for another night. But it's an important conversation that we have to let people know it's okay, and we're kind of in this together. Mr. Dillon?
In closing, I've been kind of debating whether I share this with you or not. I had written a letter to my staff, but I really do believe that this letter puts everything in context and provides you as school committee members with maybe have a clearer mindset as to currently where we are as a middle school and the direction that we want to go. So if you wouldn't mind indulging me if you don't mind me sharing this with you. Dear staff, I hope overall that your individual opening experience has been relatively smooth. If my past experience is any indication, things will start to get real if they haven't already. Some students will rise to the occasion while others struggle to find their way. We gather firsthand information regarding the academic and social emotional needs of our students and are reminded of how challenging, but yet how very important it is to meet their needs. We also are quickly reminded that parents have needs as well, and we must be sensitive to those needs. In regards to the pandemic, the COVID cloud is still hanging over our head. That cloud has impacted the way we teach, converse, and our routines and schedules. This cloud has required us to take on further direction and initiatives from the Department of Education and produce programs and interventions that will, hopefully, close existing learning gaps. The programs and interventions that we have implemented are essential to the task given to us by the Department of Ed. Granted, it may require us to be more flexible and deviate from some past experience practices, as well as taking on some new ones. but the mission is clear. Some of our new required initiatives will need to be fine-tuned and adjusted. We as a faculty will assess, evaluate them, and revise when needed. This action requires a team effort and meaningful thoughts, ideas, and respectful dialogue. Life is full of negotiables and non-negotiables. As a faculty, we will identify what is and is not negotiable and move forward in a strategic, purposeful, collaborative, and kind manner. As we move forward, let's be mindful of the theme for this year, and that's to be a difference maker. Your potential and opportunity to change a student's life and experience for the better is ever present. A kind word, helping hand, patience, sense of humor, encouragement, etc., are gestures that have no material cost associated with them. But are gestures that, for a child, can make all the difference in the world. Remember, those children who make things the most challenging for us are the ones who need these gestures the most. I have no doubt that you all have the potential to make a difference in the life of your students. This evening, I'd just like to convey that I have all the faith in my staff, and I'm very fortunate to have the staff that I do, that we're all well aware of the task at hand and how important that task is. And I've stated in the past, we may not have all the answers, but one thing I can assure all of you of is that we are not complacent as we move forward in trying to meet the needs of our students and support parents as well. So thank you for letting us share this evening, and we'll entertain questions, comments that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Doan. Do I have questions from the committee? Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Just a couple of quick statements going back to the slide of sense of belonging and partnerships. The Online Learning Center bullet, I think it's wonderful that you've taken it upon the middle school to have that person checking in on the Online Learning Center, especially for those students who may be out. You know, we've heard that from the community, our community members. We've heard that from families, and it's great to see that the middle school is doing a small part in following up and just trying to, you know, continue to be a part of these students, their education while they're, whether it's quarantining or whether it's just out on some type of medical leave. And in addition, I'm really happy to hear that the added social worker, an adjustment counselor, and as well as an at-risk guidance counselor, you know, that's clearly making a difference with what you're doing there at the middle school. So I said I would be brief, and I will, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Nunes?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Again, I'm going to follow up with what Mr. Oliver said on the sense of belonging and partnership. Question that I have on the Online Learning Center beginning in October. Do the students do that from home, or are they staying at, you know, somebody's after school and they're on a computer at school working with or in a classroom with a teacher, that type of deal?
It's students will access this while they're home.
So they'll get on the bus and go home, and
That's correct.
at
Yes.
that point in time they can,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. And I'm thrilled with the additional social worker and the guidance counselor and that type of deal. That's, you know, a fantastic use of the funds that we've talked about, the grant funds and everything else. So I'm thrilled and I'm glad it's working.
Just to clarify too, the Online Learning Center is open to all kids. It's like a homework tutorial, so if a kid just needs help, whether they've been at school all day or they're on quarantine, it's available to everybody.
Yeah.
If a kid is out for a long term, during the day, there's additional services that he had talked about, which is got all these acronyms, but our Student Success Center, where that's the accelerated recovery instructor is in there. She's during the day also doing meets with the kids. The teachers will do them during their academic supports, but they don't have those every day. So when they're available, they will be checking in with the kids. They will check in with them every day, but it may not be a live meeting, whereas the teacher in the Student Success Center can check in with them every single day.
Yeah.
After school, in addition to what we have during the day, is a homework center, you know, revisit tutorial center. So we actually have both.
Oh, super. That's great. And then again, just, you know, thanks to UMass for the STEM work. That's great. always enjoy seeing that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sammerall.
Just quick, I just want to thank you for that letter that you read to us, Mr. Doan. It really encompasses, how I feel, your leadership sort of inspires and fosters a lot of great stuff in the middle school. And I've got a sixth grader there with you, my third and last with you, and I'm so thrilled. And I meet her. I allow her to take the bus. She's my first that has been on the bus on a regular basis. But third child, get on the bus. No, but she loves it. And although she started her year injuring her ankle playing field hockey, she fractured her growth plate at Quinn. Your staff, although, with all of what's going on, everyone is so strapped, have met her and engaged her and with a smile and a lot of care and compassion. It's been a wonderful experience. And so I meet her off the bus when I'm working from home, and I'll ask her, well, every day I ask her, but, how was your day? Was it from good to excellent? And she always, our thing is, she turns to me and she says, excellent. She loves it. And I know, she's one child, but just having the trust that I have in your community and your school, and knowing that even if that's not the case for a family or a child, I have trust that you'll meet them where they're at and do whatever it takes to meet those needs and to make things work. So I'm lucky I get three years with you again, and I look forward to what's to come. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waite.
Yeah, so I'll echo, I'm so thrilled that you have this additional staff to meet your students' needs. I think it's so critical, and, I'd love to see it ongoing, but, at least certainly for this year in this difficult transition. And then I also want to say that, I do drive my son to school, and every time I drop him off, pick him up, your staff is out there greeting the kids, engaging them, and it's such a nice start. And I see many of you, out in the mornings, and I think it just sets a great tone for the kids that, they're not just wandering into the building without, they're really chaperoned in, and there's a nice word to start their day, and they're seen. So again, I think that's, it just says a lot about the culture that you're creating. We did have a couple emails that came in that were alluded to just before our meeting started. And I guess it speaks to, one of the questions was from a parent asking about disparities that you're seeing between students, and how are you meeting, so she was speaking to the fact that, we know that we have these students who have learning loss. For the students who are sitting in that classroom who didn't experience that loss, but who have been progressing along in their studies, how are they, do you finding that disparity has grown between those two groups? And are those more accelerated students, are they continuing to be challenged? I think you spoke to a few of the challenges that were going on in the different rooms, but just to speak to that parent's email, can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't want to speak for the team here, but we're all on the same page. I think we're fortunate at the middle school, and I only can speak on behalf of the middle school, that we've been able to, again, years ago, devise a schedule in which we've really been able to establish opportunities for collaboration, conversation through curriculum meetings, through common planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We, as alluded to, and I can't recall whether it was Mrs. Deacons or Mr. Hayes, we've always utilized assessments, benchmarks, as a way in which to determine the needs of our students. When we talk about needs, it could be those who may be having some struggles academically, or those students who really are excelling and doing really well. And when we get that data, we make a determination and take a look at our instruction, and we have that conversation on a weekly basis, is how can we support all of our students across the spectrum. And again, with the assessment piece this year, we're kind of instituting more assessments so that we're not waiting, in which, again, the monthly assessments did provide us with a tremendous amount of data and opportunity. But we do feel the need, specifically what has developed over the past few years, to have assessments in which we can have them more ongoing. And we talk about assessments that are really aligned to the standards, assessments that the state has determined. Again, we're always assessing students every day through a more of an informative process, but these particular assessments are ones in which we can really take a clearer look. So it's through our RTI, our data team, that meets on a weekly basis, where we have those conversations. And really, We know September is that time where we're getting to know our students. And so again, we take a look at our instruction and how can we differentiate is really what it comes down to. And so those students who are doing really well and have that success, then how can we challenge them more, provide additional stuff? And those are the conversations that we have on a weekly basis.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that, answers her
Yeah.
question, so thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll just, echo the comments of my colleagues. I'm glad that, the high school talked about, a little bit about this, and the middle school highlighted as well, how the ESSER funds, the grant funds are really helping out in our schools. So then I will be the broken record who talks about, right, these needs existed prior to the pandemic. The fact that we haven't been able to fund a social worker in the middle school is a result of chronic underfunding of our schools in Dartmouth. The needs are there, right? They're more acute now, but I think you would all agree that it's not like there was no needs before this and all of a sudden we just need a social worker. So the needs existed before the pandemic. All of the requests we get are of very high priority. We're lucky that we have, for these few years, federal funding to support that. I am deeply concerned, right, that, and this is not to you, this is more of a general comment, that in a few years, those needs will persist. But the federal funding will go away, and we'll be in a position again where we're doing the best that we can to meet the needs of our students with the resources that we have, but the resources that we have are not enough. They're not enough. So I'm deeply appreciative that we've been able to do this. It does make me nervous to hire personnel on grant funding. But I think one of the things this is really making clear, even a month into the school year, how acute these needs are, and these needs will persist for many, many years. And so I think it's something that I will continue to bring up, because we really do, and this is, again, also not on, the town side. They've been very generous in working with us. Mr. Kiley's talked about, using COVID funding. This is about us and our values as a community. And we need to continue to support our kids in this way. So I'm appreciative that you have these resources, and I really appreciate hearing the good work that you're able to do with it. And I hope that we as a community can continue to support that and continue to meet the needs of our middle schoolers in really important ways. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Safe travels home.
All right, so next on our agenda is old business. Dr. Gifford.
Madam Chair.
We need to, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I will entertain a motion to accept the Dartmouth Middle School Improvement Plan.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Oliver, a second by Mr. Nunes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. So that motion carries unanimously. Now we can move on to old business of the school committee policies. Dr. Gifford.
Okay. All right, so revisiting we'll start with the harassment, sexual harassment, that group of policies. ACA specifically, as you recall, was brand new for us. And I did try to do a little digging with the attorney, and the one thing they mentioned on ACA, why we need to have this in our policy book is, I wrote some notes here. It's explicitly about sexual harassment for the Title IX, and there are other anti-harassment statutes that include the sexual and what you spoke about last week. She said that this is explicit to it, and that we really need to have it in, especially since things changed in 2020. They updated the laws, and we just never kind of caught up. Plus, something else got in the way, which was called COVID. But so that's that one. And then I did do a little bit more research. Mr. Oliver asked about on ACAB about the employee to employee.
Yes.
So the answer I got, and just today, actually. So ACAB would be a policy that addresses harassment of students and then sexual harassment of students and staff. She mentions that harassment of students by other students, employees, vendors, and other third parties is in the first sentence. And of course, then it moves down to sexual harassment of students by other students, et cetera, employees, as we said. She also notes about it saying sexual harassment in the workplace is unlawful, and then cites the reason the model mask policy excludes employee to employee from harassment generally is that the employee to employee would be covered by other laws, most likely criminal harassment. That's the answer she gave
Okay.
me.
All right. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
So hopefully that's a little helpful, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's not that we exclude folks, but
Okay, are there any questions on ACA or ACAB? All right, do we want to, how about I'll entertain a motion to approve both ACA and ACAB?
So moved.
So I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second. Second by Ms. Amaral. Is there any further discussion on policies ACA and ACAB? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Against? And abstentions? All right, so those pass unanimously. Let's go ahead and move on to policy
facilities.
FF, naming
Okay.
of facilities.
So with what the committee recommended last week, at the last meeting, we added in the wording that we had about including, I think it's probably highlighted in your, I hope you got the newer one.
Yep.
When the opportunity to name, it's about 3/4 of the way down, or rename or dedicate a school or school-related property is being considered, the superintendent will prepare for the approval of the committee a procedure to follow in recommending names of said structures. Whenever possible, the wishes of the community, including parents and students, should be considered in naming new facilities, or we add the subsections of facilities. So we added that language upon the recommendation of the committee at the last meeting.
So I may have downloaded the wrong
Okay.
version. Do you all see that on your version? I just want to make sure.
Yep. Does everyone have that?
I got,
Got the proposed.
I've ended up with 3 of them.
Yeah, I do too.
So the line that says the wishes of the community should be considered.
Yeah, we added that.
Yes, I see
I've
that.
got, I've got one, I mean, that's per se highlighted, that
Yeah,
paragraph.
That's in there.
That's in there.
I downloaded the wrong version. It's
Okay.
okay, I just want to make sure
Sure
you all
somebody-
have
That's
the
fine.
right
But
version, yes.
That's the one that we're considering.
Yes.
Correct,
Okay.
it is, yes. All
Okay.
right, so any questions or comments on
Yeah.
policy FF? Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, going way back and everything else, this this comes up every now and then in that. But is that paragraph in there one of the things, and I've taught one of the things we had way back was like the quote-unquote, the wow, W-O-W, the wow factor. So is that how that comes into play here?
Yeah, what
Or
I
is
would.
that more a procedure?
Yeah, exactly. So what I would suggest, to your point, is, as it says, that we would set up for the approval of the committee a procedure to follow in recommending
Right.
that names of said structures. So within that, we would have a committee, et cetera, that would say, just what you're asking, how are we going to determine what is the right person? What are we going to ask folks to submit?
Right.
Okay.
And to you, it's the wow factor.
Yeah, no,
Yep, exactly.
okay, I'm good.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions about policy FF? I will entertain a motion to approve policy FF.
So moved.
All right, I'll take a motion by Ms. Waite on that one. Can I have a second? Mr. Nunes, can I
Sure.
take that as the second?
Sure.
Okay, any other discussion on policy FF?
Nope.
Nope.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Very good.
That motion carries unanimously. All right, and then we have policy KF.
And Mr. Kiley will discuss that one.
Thank you. So we incorporated the recommendations that the committee had last time, essentially adding designees in certain areas, including the Board of Health approval or any other approvals that might be needed for folks who are going to be cooking or using those facilities, and a couple of other minor clerical changes.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Kiley on policy KF?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mr. Oliver. Is there any further discussion on policy KF? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That motion carries unanimously.
Those were some meaty policies.
Yeah, next on the, thank you for keeping those up to date for us. Next on the agenda, we have an update on the district's procedures and practices as they pertain to and are affected by COVID-19, including discussion of field trips and other school-related activities. We've been getting, I think all of us, a number of comments, inputs, questions about decisions regarding open house, regarding homecoming, regarding field trips, and with the intention of providing transparency and representation to our constituents who are contacting us, I ask that this be put on the agenda because I believe that we should have an open discussion of this issue, so the community is informed what our policies are and what our guidance is on those issues. So I've asked Dr. Gifford to I think you're going to tell us a little bit about sort of the decisions that you all have made regarding that, and this will allow us to ask some questions so the community members can hear about these things, and also so Dr. Gifford and Mr. Kiley don't have to answer a bunch of emails with the same sort of questions. So go ahead.
Sure.
Dr. Gifford.
Go ahead. Well, as you know, there are different things such as excursions, which is one of the things you just approved tonight for the band program, so that would be different. The field trips are kind of the day-to-day activities, if you were just talking field trips, for example, or things like the open house, which we come together as a team. For example, the open house, I had 100% agreement for all of the entire leadership team, every principal, everyone, that it was not a good time to have an open house. I mean, I think to this meeting, for example, we don't bring people into a meeting, but parents would expect 500 people to be in a school for an open house situation, probably more. I mean, Quinn itself has 600 students or more, and to have those little rooms with people parading around. So with that said, those kinds of decisions we make as a team. We just felt it wasn't a good time right now. I know that the middle school has gone forward with a virtual open house right now. The elementary schools are still deciding what to do. Of course, folks can always call their teachers, and if they need to have even a Zoom meeting, I'm sure, folks will be more than willing to have a meeting if there's something that they need to talk about with their student. Field trips is the same thing. Right now, we are approving, well, first of all, field trips normally used to go through Michelle, who was the assistant superintendent at the time. The schools submit their proposals for their field trips. Some schools do more than others, depending on if their PTOs perhaps might fund them. But we always make sure, for the most part, we really try to tighten up on this the last couple of years, that there's curriculum aligned, because, we want, like if the fourth grade is going to a certain museum, for example, aligned to their curriculum, we would want another grade not to do the same thing. So that's always been our process. So with that said, right now, we're not planning on any kind of enclosed field trips or anything like that. We are supporting outside, like the elementary school, for example, just asked about their Halloween parade and the trick-or-trunk or trunk-or-treat or whatever, that one. Those kinds of things, absolutely. I said, my goodness, we're having football games with all of these people outside, so the outside field trips are fine. The high school was doing one recently with collecting of water. So that's kind of what we've been doing right now. As I said, we discuss it, and open house was 100% in agreement that it was not a good time to bring an entire population to our schools. It goes to, really, the result can be the contact tracing that could happen, and that could become an issue too, and then we don't know who's there. Just this weekend, we had 3 schools doing contact tracing. We were texted by Mr. Michaud. So the work that goes into those kinds of things, we're just trying to be as careful as possible, maintain as much normalcy as possible, but keep the kids in school. And if we have big events, who knows what might happen. So that's kind of the process and our thinking around all of those things that we've been doing.
Thank you. So I'm going to take the chair's prerogative of going first here this time instead of last. I don't disagree with the open house. I'm glad to hear that the middle school has made a plan for a virtual open house. I know as a parent, I found open house really important. It was the way that I got to meet my kids' teachers, and I learned about what was going on in their school, and particularly at the elementary level, to really hear the truth about what was going on with my kids. Children are not always reliable narrators about what's going on, and so I found those very deeply useful. Given the challenges of the pandemic, I would really like to see us, instead of canceling them, making plans for figuring out ways to connect with parents. Whether it be, right, everyone has a Zoom meeting and the parents can Zoom in and hear the teacher and ask a question, or something, but I think building those connections is important and getting closer to normal. I will also say, I have some concerns about, we have had some real challenges with mental health in our family, and not all kids are in band, not all kids are in sports, and so I really want us to see, thinking about how we can be creative in holding as many of the normal events as we can, to do that for these kids, because I think they really need it. And I think that's the message that a lot of us are getting from the community, is that our kids need these things. They really do. And so I am 100% appreciative of our need to be safe and the difficulties with contact tracing. But I would really like us to see, thinking about some ways, thinking about outside the box, to do some of these things, because I think it's a real need for our kids. Other comments, questions, Ms. Waite?
So, I guess to that end, as we're talking, because we have gotten so many questions about homecoming, is there a plan for homecoming at this point? I know some of the parents who are in the PTO at the high school said they haven't heard anything, and they've been reaching out to staff. Do we have a plan for homecoming dance at this point?
I know Mr. Tebow has already met with the students on it, and they've already been discussing it. That much I know.
Okay,
That
all right.
much
So
I
there
know.
is the possibility of
Yep,
it. Okay,
they're
all right.
definitely
Okay.
discussing it, and probably, the kids actually were in favor, according to what I just had the discussion with Mr. Tebow, of an outside event.
Okay,
Something
okay.
outside.
All right, that's good to know.
And I think that's part of why we wanted to see it on the agenda, because I
Right.
think we're seeing a lot of these questions. I think it's great he's working with the kids to figure it out.
That's right.
Right,
But like when I ask my kids, they're like,
yeah.
No, that's exactly right.
And so
Yeah.
I think it's good for us to communicate this in public, so that then we can say in social media or emails, we're working on it. Talk to your kid.
Right.
Wait.
plan
we'll
is being
figure it out.
developed.
Yeah,
Right,
that's- and
'cause
that's
the
really
other thing that
helpful.
I saw last year that really bothered me, not here, but in
Mm.
other communities, private homecomings.
Yes.
And I do
Yes.
not want private homecomings, right? Like, that's a recipe for disaster in terms of social emotional health. So if we can now communicate, there is a plan in the works, be patient, right? We will roll it out, that I think hopefully that may satisfy some
I
people.
think so too.
On that.
Well, I think probably to that, and Mr. Tebow, for example, would be putting that out in his Friday, week. He does such a nice job with that.
Right.
Updates, as soon as something more concrete is, that he can say, kind of thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms.
Okay,
Waite.
and can I just ask, just since the first go-around, again, we had the ban and we approved for MetLife. Does that, when we start looking at the DECA trips and things like that, is that something that we approve as a committee as well? This is just more of kind of a procedural for me.
Yes.
So anything that's overnight.
More than one day.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Exactly.
Okay.
More than one day. But I think, I think people have to take a step back. Even though we've had a pandemic, we're proceeding pretty much normally. In normal times, you wouldn't announce everything constantly, every day. We're planning this, we're planning that, we are planning it. We planned it last year, we planned graduation, we planned proms. So I think people have to relax and let the schools do that work, and then they find out about it. It's not that people are kept secret, we don't keep secrets about it. It's just, I don't know why
Because
pressure
I
to
think
be,
not everything
know?
is normal, right? I mean, the open houses were canceled.
Right.
And we didn't have
Right.
homecoming last year. And
Or
so
junior banquet.
we're not 100% normal, and we're not 100% pandemic. And so people
Yeah.
are unsure where in that spectrum we are. And so I do think we need to be, in this year, a little bit more open in communicating with people about these sorts of things, because people don't know. They just don't. They don't know where we are.
well, I do read all the principals' emails, and boy, even Potter School, the DeMello, and they really do give a lot of information. It may not be the just-in-time info, but to know that things are always in the works, I think is what people need to at least embrace. Things are in the works, it just may not be in that timely manner, you know, like immediately, so.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think this is the first we've communicated that to them. So I think it's fair for parents to ask, and now we can tell them, like, in a public forum, we are planning these things, they are moving forward, and so they can have the expectation that should conditions stay the way they
Yep.
are, that we will be moving forward for these things.
And just for clarification too, you know, when we talk about things, because again, field trips, we're talking about things that are inside being problematic. And kind of keeping, because there isn't, you know, expectation that homecoming, if it's outside, then it might be allowable. So I think, again, trying to understand, like, what those standards are, like, that also, like, provides some clarification, you know, that I don't think everyone understands that, you know, possibly you can go outside and collect. We're going to have but again, to see that, you know, what the parameters are is really helpful,
Yeah.
just for people to understand,
Right.
so.
And so along that line, right, outdoor events okay, indoor events questionable, right? Can parents, can we assume, right, that we are looking for important events to try to find ways to do them outside? I mean, that's the other question, right? If homecoming is typically inside and inside events, it's not unreasonable for people to be nervous about whether or not we're doing that. So is that sort of where we're operating from, that we're trying to see what things we can do outside that are,
I think in general, yeah.
while the
I
weather
think-
permits?
I think in general, that's a good way to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate everything, all the thoughtfulness that goes into all of this and the planning. I will say that I am 100% in favor of somehow coming up with some type of virtual open house for the elementary schools. I think that's extremely important for families and parents to engage
Yeah.
their
I think they were
students,
hoping to
teachers.
do in person. I think that's why they were, you know.
They were trying to
hoping. And we
hold
haven't
off-
had that
hold off
conversation
on
yet,
it.
but yeah, they were
Sure.
hoping, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
But one way or the other, I'm
Right,
sure that
right.
if we don't go down that road, that I have no doubt that at some point, I
Yeah.
just want to advocate
Yeah.
that I would really love to, one way or the other, we definitely need some type of
Sure.
open house for those kiddos.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
And I would imagine everybody agrees with that, for sure.
Ms. Amaral?
Dr. Jenkins and Mary Waite have kind of gone over a lot, and Chris, you kind of mentioned some good stuff. Oh my gosh, my thought just escaped me.
Mr. Nunes has a thought if you want us to come back to you.
No, just, being consistent, and what I was going to say, though, did come back to me, is that, to Dr. Gifford's point, is that if a family member, if a family and a student are having some need to connect, reach out to your teacher, see if you could set something up one-to-one to kind of go over the needs of the, what's been happening and what could be improved upon and on either end. So, yes, ideally, open house, I rely on it as well to get a feel of what's really going on in the classroom. And, but if I were to have some concern, I know that I could reach out
Right.
to the teacher to meet one-to-one, whether it be a phone call or on a virtual platform. That's really important for parents to know that that's not impossible. That's not out of the question
Right.
in the meantime. So that's what I was going to say.
Mr. Nunes?
Well, I guess I'm the rebel. Because this is way above our pay grade. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, we've got policies for field trips and overnight excursions, like with the band and Decker and the baseball teams going to Cooperstown and things of that nature. That's fine. But all of these decisions here are made at a building administrator and central office. We charge them with the safety of our students. So I don't think they're going to let 500 kids crowd into this library here to have a dance. I realize I'm being facetious, but understand what I'm saying, okay? We're here tonight from both Mr. Tebow and Ms. Xavier and Mr. Doan and his staff, you know, about, yeah, maybe there hasn't been an open house type of deal, but you know what? Email your, you know, your student's teacher, or give them a phone call and see what's going on. I go back to what we've all talked about before, and that is get the vaccine. If you're over 12 years old, get the vaccine, and then get the booster once that becomes available. That would take and solve a lot of these problems. And I think my biggest takeaway here, as I'm listening to everything, okay, and we had a discussion on this when we had our workshop with the MASC gentlemen back the end of June, I believe, and we talked about social media. And Dr. Jenkins, you sat there, and when somebody raised the question, you said, follow the Mr. Noons and don't comment. Well, you know, don't comment on social media, because 99 times out of 100, it's probably wrong. Okay, that's my 2 cents. I don't worry about it. I've got, you know, our job is to set policy and procedures type of deal. We charge the superintendent and Mr. Kiley and Ms. Townsend with operating the district. They funnel that down to their building administrators. That's their job. So why we're talking about things of this nature tonight, above my pay grade.
You are definitely entitled to your opinion, Mr. Nunes. I will respectfully disagree with you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that has affected every inch of the operations of our school. People have questions. It's our job as elected officials to carry those questions to to the superintendent. And I will also say that I hope this now avoids however many 10, 20, 30 questions that each of the schools will get and the superintendent will get, and all of that about these things, right? We have a duty to be clear and transparent to our constituents, and while I'm chair, that's what we're going to do. Next item on our agenda is the capital improvement plan. I will turn that over to Mr. Kiley.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. So I provided you with a memo that explains where we are in this process. We had $1,788,000 worth of requests that we presented to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. We received $1,518,000 in approved capital improvement planning articles at the June town meeting. The 2 remaining requests have now been recommended for funding by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. And so they have approved funding for furniture, which has certainly been an issue for us as we opened up our storage containers over the summer, and we buy a lot of particle board furniture and relatively inexpensive furniture, unfortunately, so had a lot of issues with that. Then we also have funding for vehicle replacement. It's been on our list for some time. Vehicles right now are really hard to come by, so we're not quite sure how this is going to go. But the Capital Improvement Planning Committee was kind enough to support adding some additional funds, $40,000 of additional funds for a total of $160,000 there. So the total that they are recommending for town meeting is $310,000. And then, you know, we thank them for their support, and obviously this will go up for a recommendation by the Finance Committee, the Select Board. Hopefully we get support at October 19th at the town meeting for this. We'll move forward with it. And then we'll be, by that time, a month from now or so, we'll be starting the process again.
For next year.
Excellent. Very
Questions
good.
or comments from the committee? Mr. Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Out of the projects that were funded in the June town meeting, have any of those requests been completed? Just out of curiosity. Or started, the procurement process started, I guess.
So I can give you an update on those. HVAC upgrades, we have done some work with that. Flooring replacement project, done most of the work for that. Grease trap replacement, no. Parking lot repaving, yes, we've done a lot of that work.
Was that out front here of the high school, some of that?
All over the place, but yeah, including that. Interior and exterior painting, we've done a fair amount of work, and we have not done the auditorium work yet.
Can I follow up on that? I mean, we know that supply chain issues, that there's been a lot of increase in prices. Have we come in on budget on those projects, or how's that gone?
We've been able to, fortunately, some of these projects aren't in the hardest hit areas of, construction. I mean, certainly, we talked a little bit when we looked at the stadium project, which is definitely right in the ballpark of COVID shortage issues, and we saw as a result, a fairly significant amount over budget. But fortunately, in these projects, we've been able to manage fairly well.
Sorry, I interrupted, Mr. Oliver. Did you have more questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley.
Everyone else good?
Thank you. Thank
And
you,
we don't
sir.
need any action on this tonight,
This is
right?
just an update so that you're aware of what's coming up on the town docket for town meeting.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Kiley. Next item on our agenda is the superintendent's update. Dr. Gifford.
Thank you. Oh, here it is. Just a couple of things before I talk about some of the test and stay things that we've been doing. As you probably know, I think, we did purchase a new program, a math program called Bridges, and that's teachers. I actually was talking to some coaches last week that have been working with the teachers and starting to get them trained and implement and all of that. And some of them are saying, oh my goodness, this is my hardest year yet, but they're loving it. They're loving the program. They're happy that we finally have one. So that's going well. And then just once again to reiterate that despite all of this, things are still proceeding. You heard our 2 schools tonight talk about some of the things happening. The elementary schools are also proceeding with their PBIS programs, their celebrations. Potter, for example, it just got finished with their Pause to Be Kind, Safe. You've heard this before, and a learner. And they'll be doing an outside PBIS celebration coming, actually it should be, today's the 27th, in a couple of days, I guess, if the weather permits. And as you thought about, Cushman last year worked with the Feinstein Institute and Being Kind and got a lot of grant money. Potter will be starting to work with them as well this year. So just a couple of things. And you might have heard the commissioner today announce that the mask mandate is extended until at least November 1. And not that we're close to 80% vaccinated, but a school or district that hits 80% vaccination rate by October 15th can file an attestation to say that. And if they choose to say there will be no mask mandate, only unvaccinated would wear the mask. So that's just with it. It was a 2-second meeting with the commissioner today, and he signed off. But then new updates did come out. They had it ready, so that's on the DESE website if you want to read that.
Can I
Yep.
interrupt and ask a question about that? How are they determining 80% vaccination rate in the schools? As I emailed you, I have some deep concerns about systematic errors in the Harvard
Yeah.
Public Health data that the state is using. Are they going to do actual sort of tracking of our students who are vaccinated?
It would be up to us. It would
Okay,
be-
so we
from-
would-
From
but-
what I read on this.
How would they
it did.
know that we hit 80? We'd have to figure out that we hit 80%.
Whether
Okay.
we collect vaccination cards, these are
Okay.
just things they've talked about, and.
So once again, it's up to us.
And then we would have to say that it's true. We would sign that, yes, so,
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, that's
yeah.
good to know.
That's
But
what I
there's a,
know.
Do you
just
have a question, Ms. Waite?
but there's a portal. Isn't there a place, the nurses can go onto our portal and see?
Right, but we have to collect
That's
that
what I mean,
data.
our nurses would have to really
Yeah,
strategically go down each
exactly.
student, so.
And that also,
And the amount of work, or, that would
from
involve
what
to
I
keep doing
understand
that.
from our work on
Yep.
campus on that, that assumes that people are vaccinated in the state of Massachusetts.
That's true.
Oh, that's true.
For our staff, right, that may be a problematic assumption.
Okay,
Yep,
yeah.
it's very true. So there's a lot to it, but that was today's,
Okay, sorry
you.
to interrupt.
No,
I just
that's
had some
okay.
questions. Continue, please, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. So just as an update on a test and stay program, we pretty much kicked CIC by the wayside. We have nothing to do with them, pretty much. It was a complete disaster. Except for our third program coordinator who will answer the phone, doesn't really answer any questions, but she answers the phone and tries. With that said, we're running a very successful program all on our own. So for the last, since last week, we started the clinic, we'll call it a clinic, here at the high school because the majority of our cases were close contacts. Now remember, this is close contacts. We're here at the high school due to sports and activities and that. So for the since last week and even this morning, we start about 6:30 and kids start filtering in. We did about 30 students this morning. The elementary and middle have been able to do it themselves, test and stay themselves at their schools because they've had a handful of students. So we determined that if it was about 5 or less at a school, that the nurses would handle that, and that's been the case. We haven't had many. 0 at DeMello, as of what I had the records today. 0 at Cushman, 2 at Quinn. Potter looks like 3, and then she wrote something, I'm not quite sure what that means. 3 students, and the middle school had approximately 4, I think, from what I have. I actually visited with the middle school nurses today. So the schools, other than the high school, have been easily handling the test and stay program for those students that consent, of course, and it's unvaccinated, if you recall, asymptomatic. So we've gotten a lot of help. Our elementary nurses, because they have come here in the morning, so they start their day here to help with the testing, and some staff members that help with the record keeping. We also had the stat ambulance start today. We've been in a lot of contact with them over the last few weeks, and they sent 3 people today to get used to our system. These are all people that will be at our beck and call, if you will, assisting as we need it. They're there to help us if it got big, if it stayed small, whatever it might be. Also, of course, the Board of Health. And so with all the folks that are willing to help, we're running a very good system. The database itself, sometimes parents, it's amazing to me that we've put out 3 emails about the link, sign up to consent, and then sometimes the nurse called and they said, oh, I didn't know, kind of thing. It's been going since summer. So again, fill out the consent form because it can hold up. You may want your child to be tested, but it may hold it up if you haven't consented. Right now, other than the early, like I said, with the sports, that we had a number of close contacts just to be safe. Right now, as of today, let's see, we have those kids that are positive in the district that are coming back. Let's see, those kids already came back. Today I had 1, 2, 3, this week, since Wednesday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students at the high school, couple at the middle school, 1 at DeMello, and 1 at Potter. So it's not been bad at all, to be honest. On Wednesdays, I submit this data to the state through a portal. Each school, I have to report the number of, well, luckily it's different than last year, which was a phone call, and they never remember who you are, and you have to go over everything. Like, I've talked to you a million times. You just go in, it's a portal, but each school I have to submit the name of the school, the number of students, and the number of staff that's positive. So that is submitted by the close of business day on Wednesday, and if you look on the DESE website on Thursday in the afternoon sometime, they'll report that, how many we've had for that week of positives. But I think we're doing pretty well. The close contacting, it's real. I think we've done a nice job, real nice job. And it's keeping these kids in school, like 30 kids about today were here and they stayed in school.
Can we put a link to the, I know a lot of parents have
Again,
been
yeah.
asking for a dashboard. Can we just put a link to the DESE
Sure.
portal? It's, the data's available and we
Yep,
shouldn't
it's
have
right
to
there.
recreate it. I think if
Yep.
we just put a link on our webpage
Yep, it's
to
there.
the DESE data, then people will hopefully be able to find it.
Sure, sure.
Like, there's no need for us to create our own
Recreate it,
dashboard because we
right.
already have all that
Right.
at the state.
The other thing, one thing I just want to stress to parents, this is not, to clarify confusion, it's not okay to send your child to school sick and expect the nurse to do a test to determine if he or she has COVID. It's not okay. This is not what the program's for. Under any circumstances, we don't want to send kiddos to school sick, right? So to think, because we've had that happen, they come running right in. My mother told me to come in and get tested. It's not what this is about. This is about close contacts, unvaccinated, asymptomatic, that we're hoping to keep in school. Because why keep a healthy child home if they, and out of all of this, I think we only had, I gotta, to my, 1, 2, 3, out of all of these students that we've tested over the last week or so, we've only had, from I'm reading the data, 3 that did end up testing positive out of all that.
Good.
So it's,
I'll also reiterate Mr. Nunes' point. If you're over 12, you can get vaccinated, and then you don't have to be a close
It's true.
contact. Right? The fact that we have this many kids that have to do our test and stay at a high school is super disappointing, because I would suspect that the overwhelming majority of those kids are eligible to be
Sure.
vaccinated.
Yep.
Right? And
Yep.
so people who don't want masks, people who want things to get back to normal, get vaccinated.
Yep.
Other comments or questions for the superintendent?
Thank you.
Ms. Waite?
Just to follow up, if you are vaccinated, but you're eating lunch next to someone who then is positive with COVID, this was a question that came out, are you eligible for the test and stay if you're asymptomatic? So if you're vaccinated, you're not, and if you do have any symptoms and you're not feeling well, you just go right home.
symptoms, yeah.
Okay,
Once you
so I
have
just wanted to
symptoms, it's
clarify
different.
that
Yep.
for a parent. Another
And let me clarify something
Yep.
else as along that line. We do symptomatic testing as well. That's during the day. If all of a sudden you become ill during the day,
Okay.
you can go to the nurse, and if the nurse feels it's, necessary, it depends on the symptoms, they'll do the test. Some parents are confused. Nurse Kelly calls them the big guns and the small guns, that there are certain symptoms that automatically, no matter what you test, positive or negative, you're going home, because there's still a good chance something's going to happen. There are minor symptoms that if you test negative, that's when they'll send you back to class. But because some parents were saying, well, they tested negative. Well, it's big symptoms, like it could be a cough and a fever, for example. Well, let's just send you home. They would send them home anyway, under normal circumstances. So that's just another, yeah.
So
Go
to,
ahead, Ms. Wade.
to extend that, because again, I just saw this email come in right before, we all sat down. The parent was also asking if your child has a close contact at home, meaning a family member or a staff member has a close contact at home, they themselves are asymptomatic, can they come to school? So if the student is healthy, their mother, father, brother, or the staff member, mother, father, brother, they're considered a close contact. They themselves are asymptomatic. Can they come to
they
school?
vaccinated?
Not supposed to.
Vaccinated?
What's that?
No.
Is
A
the
staff
student
member who's
vaccinated?
vaccinated is not considered a close contact.
Right. So the
So
student would
family
be
member, I think
a
what they're asking.
family member
Yeah, and if you're considered a close contact from an outside
source.
dance,
Right.
whatever,
You're not coming to school.
you're not part of our program.
Yep, okay.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think you have to also think about the resources the school has.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Well, that's what I was thinking too. But I was just responding
And the
to that email.
resources that have gone into getting this program up and
Right,
running.
right.
Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Gifford, for your explanation. So if I'm hearing you right, for the most part, it's our own staff that is conducting these tests, with the exception of some staff employees or health department employees.
That's
But
right.
overall, the overall majority of this is our staff that's implementing this program.
100%.
Is that safe to say?
Yes.
So with that, I'll just share along the same lines that it's gotten back to me that on a couple of occasions that some of our frontline nurses, as they make phone calls to parents, that sometimes the parents don't have a lot of patience
Yeah.
or they don't fully understand, and they're taking it out on our nurses.
Yes.
And I want to say to the general viewing public that please have some patience with not with all of our staff, but especially our nurses. They are our front lines out there in hazmat suits. I heard
Yeah.
testing these students. If they're suggesting something to you, please listen to them.
That's right.
Please don't give them lip. Please just go along and have some patience, because we're all in this together.
That's right.
at the end of the day. It just frustrates me when I hear that our nurses are being spoken down to because of whether it's a miscommunication or other
You're
piece.
right.
So I think that's important. I wanted to get that out. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that. I actually, like I said, I was at the middle school today, and they expressed the same thing. And my advice sometimes is you say kindly to the person, I'm going to hang up now, and when you can talk to me in a good tone, feel free to call back.
It's
Or-
unfortunate that we have
It
to do
is,
that.
but they're not, they're just delivering the message. And
Right, that's right.
We're not making the rules. And I wanted to add one more thing. I almost forgot our mobile unit. So for Plan B, again, with assistance of Sergeant Joe Vieira, and Mr. Mishu is always pushing, and he's been such a wonderful support, as you know. We've been meeting in the last few weeks, and Mr. Rick Ferreira helped out. They took, and I don't know if it was something they had behind the police station.
It's an emergency management trailer.
Yeah.
That they've reconfigured.
Fitted. So we refitted it, and it's ready. I think it's here now, or it was coming. Maybe not here today, but it's coming. We're going to have it here at the high school for now. It's mobile, but we have it as a backup now. Imagine that. So if our elementary schools or middle school become a little bit too many cases, because they don't have the help there, like we can't send our secondary level there. They're here working. We needed help to help the secondary level because the nurses' offices are crazy busy as is. We just visit one. They're crazy busy. So to ask them to do that in 30 cases was impossible. But if the elementary or middle school become overwhelmed with numbers, which we hope not, I mean, as people, elementary, we can't get vaccinated now, but the vaccination rates go up, we would use this as a drive-in, a drive-through, and we would say, okay, 10 DeMello students or whatever, this is open at such and such a time in the morning, come through, drive through, test negative, go to school, kind of thing. So that's our backup, and we can move it if we needed to. So, and I think,
Great.
from what I understand, they might start to use these as in town, even for vaccination things or whatever. So, anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Super.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? All right, so the next item, thank you, yes, and I think it goes without saying, well, we should say it. We
It's a lot.
appreciate all the work that everyone's doing to get this rolling. I don't have much. I did say when we made the decision not to allow public access that we would revisit that at every meeting. I don't think vaccination rates have changed or infection rates have changed dramatically enough for us to change our decision at the time, but I will check in with the rest of the committee. Ms. Waite.
Can I also say that, looking at this, because we talked about, again, this would be an indoor event. And then again, I think this is where we can kind of talk about that consistency, that if we're not having indoor open houses, we're not having indoor field trips, we're not having the public in for this meeting. I think, to have those lines consistent and explainable, I think is really helpful. So I'd say, we keep the status quo until those vaccination rates increase.
Okay, Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with my colleague, and the DESI's come out and said, masks until at least November 1st, so I think we know for a fact at this point in time, at least until November 1st, we're not having anyone at our meetings. That's, and we can personal opinion, we can go back anytime after November 1st, whatever our next meeting is after November 1st, and revisit this.
Okay. All right, I don't have anything else. So is there anyone else, other matters not anticipated time agenda posting? Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I know Josh happened to mention it, but just the Music Association's having our U.S. band competition this coming Saturday night. We've got 7 bands, Durfee, Salem High School, Dennis Yarmouth, Everett, Blackstone Melville, King Philip, and our Dartmouth High School band. Starts at 6 o'clock. Gates open at 5. It's $10 for adults, $5 for seniors and students. Dartmouth is on at 8 o'clock, and awards are right after. So that'll be that. And, just everyone can, because I'll be able to mention it before the next one, but we've also got October 23rd, we've got a NESBA show. And at the moment, we've got 17 to 19 bands. I'm not sure what that one is going to be, because It's kind of like the last one before finals.
Yep.
So that's going to be one of those that starts at 3 and probably is broken down into, I haven't seen anything. I was away for the weekend, so I haven't looked at the NESBA website, but that's looking like it's going to be a, per se, what they call a split show.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, they'll do 3 divisions, awards, everybody leaves, and they'll do the rest. So that's that.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes. Any other items to add? Okay, so Ms. Genther, has there been any public comment during the meeting?
There has not.
Thank you. So our next meeting is scheduled, we'll have a fun week. October 18th, we have our meeting, and then October 19th, we have town meeting.
Oh, jeez.
Everyone's looking forward to that, I'm sure. Hearing no other sort of comments, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, quick question.
Yeah,
We have a workshop Wednesday night?
Yes.
we do have a workshop Wednesday night at
Afternoon, 5 o'clock, I think.
5
actually.
o'clock.
5
yes?
o'clock.
Yes, it's 5 o'clock. Double check the
Yes,
time.
5 o'clock. I don't remember where it is.
Bush Street.
Bush Street. I
Bush
think it's
Street.
Yes,
So Bush
5 to
Street,
7.
a workshop, but our next meeting is the 18th.
The 18th, yeah.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Ms. Waite. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Lots done. Lots done tonight.